We're coming to you from the Red House, the home of the Parliament, where in just under 10 minutes the ceremonial opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament will commence. With me this afternoon is Grantley Dick. I'm Josanne Leonard. Mr. Dick is in the Ministry of National Security and in fact holds the auspicious title of being the first Marshal Mr. Dick holds the title of being the first Marshal of the Parliament between 1999 and 2001. Also scheduled to join us this afternoon, Grantley, is Dana Sita-Hall, former independent senator and practicing attorney at law. And she's going to be tipping in to add some colour to our coverage of this afternoon's proceedings.
Most certainly she will have a lot to say, having served as an independent senator in the last Parliament.
Well, you know, we're going to be relying very heavily, me and our viewers and listeners are going to be relying very heavily. We apologize for what may have been a temporary dip in our audio. But if you're just joining us, we're welcoming you to coverage of the opening of Parliament, the ceremonial opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament, which will commence shortly. As we can see from our pictures here, the Parliament chamber is filling up and is probably almost filled to capacity from what we've been monitoring, with an estimated 400 invited guests, Grantley, in attendance, and among them will be the Chief Justice, ambassadors and High Commissioners of the various diplomatic missions, former presiding officers, and many others. We're also going to be giving our viewers, those on the Parliament channel, an opportunity to see some of the pictures that might be coming from the Senate, because as you've explained and as we know, there'll be a simultaneous swearing in, but of course the proceedings in the Senate will not take as long because there are not as many senators.
Not as many senators. We have as many as 41 members in the lower house who would be sworn in. Can we pause at this stage to invite Ms. Sita-Hall?
Oh, that definitely. Well, we don't have to pause. We can continue talking as Dana joins us.
Welcome, Ms. Sita-Hall.
On time. So we're joined now by Dana Sita-Hall, herself an independent senator, a former independent senator rather, and a practicing attorney and someone who knows the machinations and the ins and outs of the National Parliament very well. And I'm just going to do, Grantley, if you can just sort of give us a sense of what should be coming up shortly with the very first ceremonial procedure while Dana and I sort of organize ourselves here with our microphone.
The procedural brief as provided by the Clerk of the House, at 1:29 p.m., the Marshal of the Parliament will enter the chamber, the mace in the crook of his arm, and place the mace of the House of Representatives in the lower position at the table of the House. Following that, the Marshal will move to his seat. And the Clerk of the House will then immediately read the proclamation. There is the Marshal, Mr. Sebastian Modest, retired Warrant Officer Class 1 of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, who is into his first foray in the parliamentary arena. Mr. Modest has only taken up duty this week. He now places the mace in the lower position.
A proclamation by His Excellency
Moves to his seat.
Professor George
Clerk of the House
Richards, President
is reading the
and
proclamation.
Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Whereas it is provided by subsection 1 of Section 67 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, that each session of Parliament shall be held at such place within Trinidad and Tobago, and shall commence at such time as the President may by proclamation appoint. Now, therefore, I, George Maxwell Richards, President as aforesaid, do hereby appoint the Red House, Port of Spain, Trinidad, as the place at which the first session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago shall be held, and 1:30 p.m. on Friday, the 18th day of June 2010, as the time at which the said session shall commence, given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, at the office of the President, St. Anne's, this 4th day of June, 2010.
Ceremonial beginning the ceremonies, Grantley and Dana, and the playing of the national anthem. Well, I want to officially welcome you, Dana, and let you say good afternoon to our listeners and viewers, both on the Parliament channels, on radio and television, and of course the World Wide Web. So great to have you with us.
Honourable members,
Thank you very much,
in
Suzanne.
accordance with Standing Order 3.1,
I'm here clearly in a
I
different
now
capacity,
invite
which is very
proposals for the office
interesting
of
for me
Speaker
to
of the
move on from
House.
that side to this side.
Madam Clerk, I propose that Mr. Wade Mark
Now this
take
is
the
interesting
chair of
because
this
I
House
understand that
as Speaker.
the opposition was going to second this,
Clerk, I do wish to
Yes.
second that proposal.
and this is unusual. In the
Are there
past,
any
we've
other
had
proposals?
either the same side seconding it or another proposal.
There being no other proposals,
So you have bipartisan,
I now
as they would
declare
say,
Mr. Wade
approval
Mark duly
of
elected
the
Speaker
of
of the
the
House.
Speaker of the House. So
That's
now
so.
Marshal, will you bring the-
So maybe that's a
a good sign.
Maybe
The clerk of the House has just instructed the Marshal to go in search of the newly appointed Speaker, and shortly we'll see them making their way into the Parliament chamber.
Well, that's very interesting, Dana, as you said. And just very quickly, for those of us, for those who are joining us, we're on the Parliament channel, on radio, Parliament radio channel 105.5 FM, and also on the Parliament channel, and of course the World Wide Web. And we've had the Clerk of the House reading the presidential proclamation, Jackie Sampson Miguel, and simultaneously happening in the Senate would have been Neil Jagassar doing exactly the same thing.
yes.
Anthony Rose from Exodus, who did a solo rendition of the national anthem. And as you've just pointed out, we've had bipartisan approval and, seconding of the Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House, Senator Wade Mark. And Grantley, what happens in this? You say he goes in search of...
Well, yes, he went to collect the Speaker, and he would escort Mr. Speaker down to the Parliament chamber, where, of course, Mr. Speaker will, having entered the chamber, the clerk will administer the vote of allegiance to him.
But there is the former Speaker, Barry Sinanan, and the former President of the Senate and his wife. That's Danny Montano and his wife.
Yeah.
Looking on at the proceedings and doubtless probably
I was-
reminiscing as to when they were sworn in.
Yes, and there's
the
Alice
former
Clark.
president.
And there's a bit of a piece of Mr. Basdeo
Former Prime
Pandey,
Minister.
former Prime Minister Basdeo Pandey and
I don't
former
know-
leader of the UNC.
I don't know if any one of you all saw the news, the editorial this morning, which says in part, in 2001 about Mr. Mark. In 2001, during a short stint as Vice President of the Senate, he ably demonstrated his ability to preside fairly and his easy and complete grasp of the standing order. So I thought that was a favorable comment in respect of Mr. Mark.
Well, I worked alongside him, I should say. Alongside literally. I was behind him,
Yeah.
more or less, in the last Parliament.
Yeah.
And one thing was certain, he understood the standing orders, which are similar, almost identical in the Senate as in the House.
Yeah.
He knew his standing orders.
He's been here for what, 20 years or something? Close to 20 years.
So we-
Maybe longer,
Longer than that.
because if he had been there since the NAR time, I don't know in what capacity, but that would be longer. He was the longest standing member of the Senate, off and on when the last Parliament, I remember, that was being mentioned.
There he is, the new Speaker of the House of Representatives, being accompanied by the new Marshal of the Parliament, Sir Sebastian Modest.
And we're just getting a glimpse here of all of the judges who would have also had their ceremonial entry into the chamber as well, Grantley.
Usually the judges are accompanied by the Court Information and Protocol Officer, and they take their positions in the chamber prior to the arrival of the Honourable Speaker.
Well, this is one time when you have all branches of state sitting in one chamber. The Parliament, the Executive and the Judiciary.
I, Wade Mark, having been elected a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
Well, that is the same oath that senators take as well.
And we have the benefit of, sort of glancing up to our right and taking a little peep at what's happening in the upper house in the Senate. And there's Subhas Pandey is on his feet. But we come right back to the ceremonial opening here at the first session of the 10th Parliament on Friday, June 18th, 2010. And if...
The Speaker, having taken his place on the dais, bow to the right and then to the left. He's now in position. At this time, the mace of the House of Representatives was already placed to the top position of the table by the Marshal.
Honourable members, in accordance with Standing Order number 41 of the House of Representatives, I invite proposals for the office of Deputy Speaker of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to propose that Dr. Fuad Khan do take the chair of this House as Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to second this nomination.
Are there any other proposals?
Well, you see, that's clearly not going to be happening because the government
There being no other proposals,
seconded his nomination.
I now declare Dr. Fuad Khan duly elected Deputy Speaker of the House and invite him to take the oath of allegiance.
Sorry,
This is in
the
fact-
opposition.
Sorry?
I should have said the opposition.
The opposition, yes.
This is in fact the second such appointment as Deputy Speaker for Dr. Fuad Khan, having served as Deputy Speaker under the late Hector McLean, during the speakership of Hector McLean.
Fuad Khan, having been elected a Member of Parliament, do swear by Allah that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Well, Dana, you know that this is not the first time on this bend for Dr. Fuad Khan. He served as a Deputy Speaker between 1995 and 2000.
That's right.
That's correct, yes.
And he was also a member of the House in the subsequent Parliament. And actually was one of the backbenchers.
I now invite
in the opposition.
the other members of this honorable House to take the oath of allegiance.
Member for Oropuch East.
So this is where the where you have 41 members to swear in.
Having been elected a Member of Parliament, do swear by the Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and
government
Tobago,
business
will
in the
uphold the
House.
Constitution
See,
and
the
law,
Honorable Attorney General is on his legs now. He has
conscientiously
just been sworn in
and
the
impartially
Senate.
discharge the responsibilities
Because
to
the
the
members of
people
the
of
Senate,
Trinidad and Tobago,
those of
upon which
persons who
I
may
am
not know,
about to enter.
would be the unelected members of Parliament, and they
The
would be
Minister of National
swearing in
Security.
at the same time.
The Minister of National Security is taking his oath of office now, Brigadier John Sandy.
In the Senate. And here in the House, the next
Member for
person would
Superior.
be the Honorable Prime
Prime
Minister,
Minister.
who always sits next to the leader of government business in the House.
I, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, having been elected a Member of Parliament, do swear by the Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
And as Kamala Prasad Bisesa, the new Prime Minister, is signing to a round of applause as well, as we look quickly to our right, we see Senator Mary King being sworn in the Senate.
In another dimension, having been independent senator now.
Member for
the government.
Chaguanas West.
Well, we know who this is.
The colourful Jack Warner.
Well, and the member with the most votes
Austin
in
Jack
the last
Warner,
election.
having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will
In the
conscientiously
Senate, Senator Vassan Barrett
discharge
is now
the
taking the oath
responsibilities
of
of the
office.
people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I
He's
am about
Minister
to
of
enter.
Food Production, Land and Marine Affairs, is it?
Yes.
Is it usual to have applause in the floor?
Member for
Unprecedented. I've never experienced that before.
I know we didn't have it in the Senate when I was in there, but I wonder if the House is different. And here is the leader
Winston
of the
Dukaran,
COP.
having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by the Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law,
Senate chamber, the
and will
Minister of
conscientiously
Health
and
is taking the oath of office
impartially
now.
discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Senator Teresa Batiste Cornelis.
And you know, it's interesting as we see Mr. Dukaran swearing on the Bhagavad Gita to note that just 15 years ago, when Mr. Pandey had to swear, it was difficult to locate the Bhagavad Gita.
Member for Point Pair.
Carol McLeod.
Former president of the Powerful Oilfields Workers Trade Union and out of the People's Partnership coming from the Movement for Social
Errol
Justice.
McLeod, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God
Out of
that
the
I will
Senate chamber
bear
is
true
Senator
faith
Fazal
and
Karen,
allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the
Minister of
Constitution
Science,
and
Technology
the law,
and
and
Tertiary
will
Education.
conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
You were saying, Dana, that this is the first time that you're hearing applause in the
Yes.
in the chamber. So first, a couple of firsts today. The government side nominating the Speaker and Deputy Speaker and being seconded by the opposition.
And I understand that's what happened in the Senate as well. That must have arisen out of
Member for
consultation,
Faizabad.
I believe, or at least communication by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition.
I, Chandresh Lakshmidat Sharma, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by the Srimad Bhagavad Gita that I will
Chandresh
bear
Sharma,
true
the
faith
MP
and
for
allegiance to
Faizabad,
Trinidad and
again, no
Tobago,
stranger to the
will uphold the Constitution and the law,
political,
and will conscientiously and
hustings
impartially
and the chamber
discharge the
and the
responsibilities to the
and
people
representation.
of Trinidad and Tobago,
And
upon which I
as
am about
he's
to
doing
enter.
this,
Senator Emmanuel George.
Senator Emmanuel George, Minister of Public Utilities, is being sworn in on the government side of the Senate.
Member for Tobago East.
Well, that's interesting that this member, minister, is being sworn in so early in the front bench.
In the front bench.
I, Vanilla
This is
Ali
honored.
Toppin, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance
Out of the Senate
to
chamber, we
Trinidad
have
and Tobago,
Senator the Honorable
will uphold
Rudwati
the
Nan
Constitution
Ramgulam,
and
Minister
the
of
law,
Public Administration.
and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
And some people's hands shake at this time. I don't know if it's just the moment or this nervousness.
Well, the
What?
cameras and this is the moment, you know. This is the moment. This is formally saying, you know, out of everything, this is the real work is beginning here. You know, representing the people's business in the national parliament.
Perhaps we should indicate that
Member for
she
Caroni
is
East.
Minister of Tobago Development,
Yes.
in respect of which there has been some contention as to whether there should be or should not be, but that's...
I, Tim Gopi Singh,
In the Senate chamber, there is Senator Kevin Ramnarine,
do swear
Parliamentary
by the
Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and
that I will
Energy
bear
Affairs.
true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will
No
uphold the
newcomer,
Constitution
Doctor.
and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, upon which I am about
See,
to
off in the VIP enclosure, Dr. Gregory Bissessa, spouse of the Honorable Prime Minister.
I see. And in respect of Minister Kevin Ramnarine, Senator, I actually just came from Guayco Presbyterian and they were very pleased to tell me that he had been a former student there and his mother was a principal previously. So there you go.
There you go.
Member for Mayaro.
And then, as Winston Gypsy Peters makes his way to do the official doings, David Abdullah is being sworn in on the government side in the upper
Winston
house.
Peters, having been elected a
Colourful
member
and
of
different ways
Parliament,
characters.
do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago and will uphold the Constitution and the law and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibility to
Senator
the people
Patrick
of
Watson of the
Trinidad and
University of the
Tobago,
West Indies, who's
upon
also
which
being
I'm
sworn in on the government side in the Senate, for those of you who are trying to get a sense of what might be taking place. As we've been telling you, here with Dana Sita Hall and Grant Lee Dick, that we're covering the ceremonial opening of the 10th Parliament. And there's a simultaneous ceremony, or simultaneous ceremonies taking place. We're focused here on the
Member
lower
for
house.
Tabakit.
Maybe we should say that Minister of Arts and Multiculturalism is what Winston Peters is,
Yes,
which is
a
interesting.
bit of it's a mouthful,
I,
but
Surajratan
people seem
Rambachan,
to have taken it
having
quite
been
well.
elected a member of Parliament, do swear
Out in the Senate chamber
by
is Senator
Srimad
Emba
Bhagavad
Mohini,
Gita
Government
that I will
Senator,
bear true faith and
being
allegiance to
administered
Trinidad
the
and
oath of
Tobago,
office.
will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and
Minister of Foreign
impartially
Affairs.
discharge the responsibilities to the
Mr.
people of
Ramachan
Trinidad and
House.
Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Well, you've commented already, Dana, that there's some experienced hands in the government mix.
Yes, you can see that.
So a good mix of new and old.
I do think so. I would
Member
like
for San
some more
Fernando
women, though.
West.
Not because I'm a woman, because I think it's always good to have that balance.
Dr.
Here's
Rambachan
one.
himself. Dr. Rambachan himself has served in the ministerial office before. He used to be a minister in the Ministry of Trade.
Prasad Bechan,
Yes.
having been elected a member of
And
Parliament,
I was going to say
do
Carolyn, but
swear
maybe
by
I should say
Almighty
Madam
God
Minister was a
that
senator.
I will bear true
the,
faith and allegiance to
Parliament
Trinidad and
before
Tobago, will
And of
uphold
course,
the
she's
Constitution and the
been
law,
ushered right
and will
into her natural fit, which
conscientiously
is
and
the Ministry of Energy
discharge the
and Energy
responsibilities
Affairs,
to the people of Trinidad and Tobago,
which
upon
is slightly
which
different
I
from the
am
last
about to
administration,
enter.
which was Ministry and energy resources, I think is what it was called
I
then.
suppose it's a name. This one is. She is an engineer by profession and has taught at the University of the West Indies.
And this is woman time now because of up in the Senate, Dana.
Yes.
Senator Penelope Beckles. So I guess we're on to the opposition swearing in.
Yes, Senator Penelope Beckles Robinson.
Leader
She's
of-
leader of business.
Leader
yeah.
of business.
Member for
On the
St.
Senate.
Joseph.
Well, of course, there'll be fewer senators there. And fewer persons there because there are only 31 senators. And here is the controversial Minister Volney, former justice. At least he'll get the justice somewhere.
I, Herbert
Haven't been Justice Volney before.
having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago,
Over in the
will
Senate chamber,
uphold
Senator
the
Ted
Constitution
Rupnarine,
and
Opposition
the
Senator.
law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, upon which I am about to enter.
I was going to say no novice to politics since he was president of the guild in the Caveville campus when I was there.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, he was a couple of years ahead of me. A Dominican by birth, he became a Trinidadian years ago. And has
Minister
lived
Volney.
there for a long time, Justice
Who's the
Volney.
Minister Volney?
Now Minister Volney.
Member for Dabadi Umero.
Now we have Anna Roberts, the Honourable Anna Roberts, MP for Davide Amira and Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
I, Anil O.
Out in the Senate
Roberts,
chamber, we have Senator
been
Fitzgerald
elected a
Hines
member
taking
of
the
Parliament,
oath of office.
do swear by Almighty God
I don't know if you're going to
that
hear
I
a big
will bear
word
true faith
coming after
and
this.
allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and
Very
impartially
distinctive
discharge
personalities,
the
one would say.
responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Senator Hines as well, a very experienced hand at Parliament, having served from 1995 to 2007.
And you know, this is Senate swearing in, well, at least the viewers will see it later, but it's much more sedate than the even swearing in the House. And that's how it will continue. The debates in the House will be
Member for Chaguanas East.
from those in the Senate. I have always been.
Over in the Senate chamber, we now have
And here we have Minister Katie.
I, Stephen Cadiz, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
On a movement adjusted.
The Keith Noel movement.
Senator Shamfa Kojo, who's the representative of Tobago.
Member for Naparima.
And that would be the last of the opposition members, is it?
No, there is
In the
Senator.
Senate.
No, there is Senator Faris Alwawi.
Oh, yeah.
A bit of new, a bit of old.
I,
This is
Nizam
Nizam
Baksh, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty Allah that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
And I have been told by a former colleague of mine, Easton Mackenzie, that he has vast experience in community development. That in fact he was a community development officer years ago. So that should suit him down to this.
Well, this is one of the ministries that has been realigned coming out of the Ministry of Culture,
Member for
Community
Togo,
Development and
Sandy
Gender
Grandin.
Affairs. Been given particular emphasis in this administration.
And there's Deanne Curran's son, just having been sworn in the Senate. Harris Alwari, a lawyer. Of the 4 lawyers, one of the 4 lawyers of the 6 PNM senators.
I, Rupert Griffith, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
Member of Parliament for
Tuku Sangri Gandhi. And our new Minister of Tourism.
He had been the deputy speaker, I believe, under this former PNM administration between 91 and 95.
And he was one who crossed the floor.
Yes, he did. Together with Dr. Lass, Dr. Vincent Lass.
Vincent Lass.
Member for Caroni Central.
Crossing the Senate chamber, your former colleague, Subhash
having been
Ramkilawan.
elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
By occupation and by profession.
And he is the new Minister of the People and Social Development. Again, a bit of realignment taking place there.
I guess it's more focused on people. Corinne McKnight.
Member for St. Augustine.
I, Prakash Ramadar, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by the Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Prakash Ramadar himself, practicing mainly criminal law. Mixed legal affairs.
Member of Parliament for St. Augustine.
And over in the Senate, we have the
Member
independent
for
senators
Moruga,
being sworn in.
Tableland.
And this is Senator Helen Drayton.
That's right, one of those who was there.
Yes,
in
so
the last
she's
Parliament.
yeah.
Cut short, having been cut short to 2 years and 4 months.
I, Clifton Dikoto, having been elected a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
World of Education, having served as a school principal and school supervisor upon retirement.
And on the independent Senate side, Garnet, we have
one of the new
faces.
Faces, yes.
Professor Harold Ramkisoon.
Member for Couva South.
The Guard of Honor is making its way along Abercrombie Street to assemble in position in order to receive their excellencies.
And while he's doing that, Rudy
do swear by the Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold
one of the
Constitution
offerings
and the
from
law,
the UNC, but on the labor front.
conscientiously
You say the UNC
and
is
impartially
with its
discharge
moorings
the
in the belly of the labor movement, and
responsibilities to
certainly
people of
the sugar
Trinidad
workers
and
and
Tobago, upon which I am
but
about
the very
to
union
enter.
that, of course, gave us the founder of the UNC and former Prime Minister Basdeo Pandey.
So it's not quite a labor party.
But the sugar workers trade union.
Yes, it's almost.
Almost.
But remember, ULF, part of the origins of the UNC, was primarily labor-based, if I recollect correctly.
Dr. Victor Wheeler,
Member for
representative
Tobago
of
West.
Tobago, Independence, and is out of Tobago, just having taken his oath of allegiance. He's followed by Elton Prescott, Senior
I,
Counsel.
Delmon Baker, having been elected a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities of the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
You can hear the music in the background.
The music in the background of the
Guard of Honor.
The Guard of Honor, which heralds the coming of the arrival of their excellencies. Grantley?
Not just
no?
yet.
Not just yet?
No, they're marching into position. And we'll get a signal. We'll have to see the Chief of Protocol and some other officials first. And then that will signal that their excellencies are on the way.
Well, it's certainly rousing. It's
Member for
rousing me.
Kamuto Manzalina.
It is customary for guards of honor to be mounted on ceremonial occasions at the
I,
opening of the
Colin
law
Parker,
term.
having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
MP for Kamuto Manzanilla.
Right. And he is sitting the passing of the guard now from his father to young attorney.
Lots of lawyers, as you said, Dana. Must be something about lawyers and politics.
Well, I mean, Parliament is about passing legislation.
Yeah.
Matters connected. So, the natural gravitation.
Member for Lopino, Bonaire West.
And as he makes his way, the member for Lopino Bonaire West, Dr. Lincoln Douglas, Dr. Rolf Balgubin has been sworn in as an independent senator.
I, Hen Lincoln Douglas,
Upper House,
having been elected a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
And Dr. Douglas was one of the ministers who was sworn in. I think second to last, Subhash Pandey being the last. And he actually came from a very a background that appeared to be a struggling background, and he's made it through. I read a story about him during the election. It sounded a whole history really sounded as if he would.
Member for Arima.
Well, he's going to be a minister. Well, he is a minister now in the Ministry of the People and Social Development.
Roger D. Samuel, having been elected a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
I saw a big picture of him, and I came down from Arima today. Probably an election poster that was about 4 feet tall. It still stays there. That minister in the office of Prime Minister.
For Couva North.
So is it, Grandly, that it would seem as if business in the upper house is more or less coming to a close in terms of the swearing?
Ramona Ramdial, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by the Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Was Ramona Ramdial, one of the 4, what I would call young parliamentary secretaries. There are 3 women and 1 man, and he's a lawyer, Jairam Sumangal. There you are, another lawyer.
But Ramona going into a ministry which is being driven by another woman, that's Senator Mary King, the Ministry of Planning, Economic and Social Restructuring and Gender Affairs.
She is actually a teacher, Ramona Ramdial. And Stacey Rupnarayan, on the other hand, is an engineer going into the...
Stacey Alana Rupnarayan, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by the Holy Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Ms. Rupnarayan is Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs. Clearly, the sitting of the Senate is suspended.
Yes, because I don't think they do have infotographers, as we are seeing in the other monitor, taking all those photos. From my experience, I know that's
Member for La Hoketa, Talparo.
Parliamentary Secretary in
I, Jairam Simangal, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by the Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
The atmosphere in the Senate chamber obviously very relaxed as members seem to be interacting freely with one another.
This is the last of the government members of Parliament.
I, Neela Khan, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Allah that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
She has graduated into big politics now.
I guess it would definitely be graduation. Although those local government members have been there for 6 years at least, twice to go to the chamber, maybe 7 longer than a normal member of Parliament. So there you are.
So Neela Khan, MP
Member for Port of Spain
Town,
South.
we now begin to see the swearing in of the members of Parliament on the other side of the House.
The opposition.
The opposition.
And
I, Marlene MacDonald, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Member of Parliament, Port of Spain South.
well, that's the first time we're having a leader of opposition business in
Member for Digger Martin West.
as a woman. We had years ago Nafiza Mohammed, leader of opposition business in the Senate.
I, Keith Christopher Rowley, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
The leader of his party, and here he is now leader of the opposition. In the background, you will see the Chief Justice and his wife. Chief Justice.
Member for Laventil
Wife Denise.
East, Mova.
I, Donna Cox, having been elected a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, upon which I am about to enter.
As a former PR person.
Yeah, she was at National Farmers, and then she was coming out of your ministry.
Yes, Minister of State in the Ministry of National Security.
Actually, quite a popular minister, from what all accounts I heard.
Yes, she had responsibilities for the fire service, the prison department, ODPM, among others.
I, Nigel Young Hippolyte, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Honorable Nile Young Hippolyte.
It's interesting, you know, this 2 months ago when they last were here, they would have been the other side.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West.
Retired school principal, Mrs.
Patricia McIntosh. Having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Sorry?
Staff of the House is also a lawyer. Jackie.
Member for Digomartin North East.
I, Colin Burt, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
In the last Parliament, he was very hard-working, and in that capacity as then Minister Indra.
Member for Labray.
A bit of some kind of little humor passing there. One former Minister of Works to the new former Minister of Works? To the new Minister of Works, sorry?
I, Fitzgerald Jeffrey, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Right. Yes, Fitzgerald Jeffrey, who used to be, I believe, Minister in the Ministry of Tertiary Education.
Tertiary Education, yes.
I found him extremely present, working well, when I had to work with him.
In Central.
And you do recall that MP Imbert said he's willing to help Minister Warner anytime.
I, Amory Brown, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
Hard-working ministers in the last regime, Minister of Social Development.
I actually went with him to the Parliament 22 years ago to the assistance party because I'm interested, and he was doing drug rehabilitation.
Member for St. Anne's East.
I, Joanne Thomas, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Former PM.
Member for Aruka Maloney.
This is Alicia Hospitalis.
I actually taught her.
I, Alicia Hospitalis, having been elected a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Hospitalis is a former Minister of State in the Ministry of Social Development in the last administration.
She worked with Dr. Brown, and they're both very pleasant people. She was very enthusiastic, I found.
Member for Point Forte.
This is Paula Gopi Schoon, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities of the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
This is the lady who presided in her capacity as Minister of Foreign Affairs over 2 major international conferences here. And she actually was on the front cover of a major publication with President Obama of the United States.
Was that when she hugged him?
Member for San Fernando East.
The member for San Fernando East, Patrick Augustus Mervyn Manning.
I, Patrick Augustus Mervyn Manning, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Our former Prime Minister, and this must be a particularly difficult time for him, but he owes it, of course, to his constituents.
And he has created his own bit of history in terms of being the longest serving
Member of Parliament.
Longest serving.
Since 1971.
Member of Parliament.
The time when there was no challenge. That was a no vote campaign, and came in then and continued.
Shall we pray? Please stand. Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House, here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen.
We've just had a prayer from the Speaker, and you can help our viewers to just understand the formalities of what we do.
Honorable members, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago desires to address all members of Parliament. This sitting is now suspended.
Indication that the presiding officer is not in his place. During the suspension, senators will join those assembled in the Parliament chamber and await the arrival of their Excellencies, Professor George Maxwell Richards, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Dr. Jean Ramjohn Richards. At 2:26 p.m., the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House will leave their respective chambers and proceed to the Abercrombie Street entrance of the Red House to greet His Excellency the President. His Excellency is scheduled to arrive promptly at 2:30 p.m. After their Excellencies have alighted, the Chief of Protocol will introduce the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House to their Excellencies. After the exchange of greetings, the Speaker of the House will present the Chief of Defense Staff to His Excellency the President.
So in the interim, this is now just milling around and a little bit of whether it's picong, old talk, camaraderie. That's what's taking place.
That is actually what.
Is that what takes place, Dana, having been there?
That is what takes place, and you make a comment on different things. Something like what we have been saying. The judges there, who sit there, all of the judges of the Court of Appeal and the High Court, sometimes the senators will turn around and have conversations with them, and that sort of thing. People might actually get up and walk because there's no actual sitting, although most people stick to their seats and say hi and think matters of that kind.
Well, this beautiful picture here, this ceremonial picture here, my brief from the producer, Jason Elcock, is that we have an all-female guard.
Yes.
Guard of Honor, sorry?
What I understand this afternoon is that the Guard of Honor comprising members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the regiment, the Coast Guard, the Air Guard, and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Reserves, apart from the parade commander, Major Arden Williams, who is standing out front, and the color party, the officers in the color party, all other members on parade are female. There's a female detachment.
And this is a first, or this has been done like this way before?
No, I remember when Her Majesty the Queen was here in November.
Okay.
There was an all-female detachment parading in honor of Her Majesty. The two presiding officers, Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, are escorted by the Marshal of the Parliament, and they are walking in a northerly direction along Abercrombie Street to receive their Excellencies.
Well, this is the time when we would normally give you a short bio of both of the presiding officers. I do know a little bit about Wade Mark, and we have mentioned some of it already. He's been involved in the labor movement. He's been a member of Parliament for a number of years. He's been a minister. He's been very active as leader of government business in the Senate for the last 2 parliaments. I don't know, except that he is a lawyer and functions in a very senior capacity in a firm that bears his name, family name. Timothy Hammersmith is not that well known to the viewers.
But the Hammersmith name seems to be associated with the politics as well, right? Because we had somebody in the Senate who was
Angela Hammersmith.
Angela Hammersmith.
Years ago, she was a senator for the PNM, I believe, a temporary senator. But Roger Hammersmith was an acting Chief Justice, and I believe he's cousin to the current President of the Senate.
Well, in fact, I met Senator Philip Hammersmith when I was here. Yeah, he was Vice President to Mr. Ganesh Ramdial, and he was President of the Senate.
Right, that's what I knew that there was a Hammersmith.
Yeah, Philip Hammersmith. Right. As a matter of fact, he acted on a number of occasions as President of the Senate.
Okay, so my old brain is really not tricking me too much. But as you said, we've had this all-female Guard of Honor when the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen was here. So it would seem, one would assume now that we have a female Prime Minister, that in terms of the ceremonial Guard of Honor, that they've been assembled again.
Maybe a concession to that, or recognition.
A recognition, maybe we should
in
say.
Addition to
I
which,
use both.
that's correct. In addition to which is the 30th anniversary since the enlistment of females in the Defence Force.
I see.
Yes, so that it's an important occasion for them, significant occasion. We have the senators joining the chamber now. Yes.
Did you tell me what the red hat represents in what we just saw in the forces outside? Some of them were green hats, only caps.
Oh yes, those wearing the red headdresses are members of the Defence Reserves, Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force Reserves.
I see.
They used to be the Volunteer Defence Force before.
Well, there's something of interest, if I may interrupt, just in case I forget to mention it. In England, what happens is that you have the actual throne speech being given in the House of Lords.
By the Queen.
Yes, which is equivalent to our Senate in that sense. It's unelected. Here we have it being done in the House of Representatives. And the reason for that is in England, the Queen does not enter the House of Commons because years ago, that's 1642, King Charles I entered or dared to enter the Commons chamber and attempted to have 5 MPs arrested. The then Speaker refused to divulge where they were hiding. And since then, a convention has been that no monarch can enter the House of Commons.
Wow.
So therefore, their official opening, as it were, when the speech is read by the head of state. In our case, our head of state is the president. That is done in the House of Lords. Ours will be done in the House of Representatives. Again, we have another distinction. In England, the Queen travels to the Parliament chambers in a horse-drawn carriage.
Well, we could do that.
Well, I guess we have a lot of that. Or a donkey.
Their Excellencies have arrived at the corner of Knox Street and Abercrombie and being greeted now by the presiding officers.
And just as in England, our armed forces line the procession would be where they have to pass through. That's the same thing. That's one tradition that we have in common.
Chief of Protocol by this time would have introduced the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House to their Excellencies. The Speaker of the House of Representatives then presents the Chief of Defence Staff to His Excellency, who escorts His Excellency through the saluting days. Brigadier Edmund Dillon, Chief of Defence Staff. Trumpeters from the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment band will sound the fanfare as His Excellency accompanied by the Chief of Staff and followed by the aide-de-camp. An aide to the Chief of Defence Staff proceeds to the saluting days. His Excellency will mount the dais and receive a presidential salute. The Trinidad and Tobago Regiment Band will play the national anthem. The national anthem is played by the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment Band to herald the arrival of His Excellency the President.
Or maybe we could be queuing our, that's that we're clearly hearing some very distressed person in the crowd, which the cameras are definitely picking up. So
At this stage, the Guard Commander, Major Williams, will approach His Excellency the President and invite him to inspect the Guard of Honor. The Red House, known as the home of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, holds a special place in the heart of every single Defence Force serviceman and woman, even those who are retired. It was at the Red House in 1962 that the Defence Force stood resolutely on parade in order to usher in this country's independence. His Excellency the President has accepted the invitation of the parade commander, of the Guard Commander, to inspect the Guard. And he's inspecting the front rank of the Guard, accompanied by the Chief of Defence Staff, Brigadier Edmund Dillon. And bringing up the rear to the right, just behind His Excellency, is Major Sheldon Audan, aide-de-camp to His Excellency the President.
And there are all those members of workers from the Court of Justice standing outside to walk open. And not common ceremony. We have something like this for the opening
of the law term.
But it's not as extensive. Decorative, actually. The music is always great.
His Excellency will pause to acknowledge the colour party of the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force. In fact, this afternoon there are 3 colours on parade: the presidential colour, the regiment colour, and the colour of the Air Guard.
So for those of us who don't know, the presidential colour is
the president's colour is regarded as the senior colour,
right,
carried by the Defence Force personnel.
Is it a colour?
Is it a colour? That's what I meant. Yeah.
It's consecrated. A flag. It's a flag.
Right.
And because it's consecrated, it's known as the colour, the force's colour. So one would not refer to it as the regiment flag or the Coast Guard flag. You refer to it as the regiment colour or the Coast Guard colour or the colour of the Air Guard.
So he has his own colour, which is kind of I find that music is so lovely to walk to. You have to do you have to walk for miles with that.
In addition to the colour and parade, there is also the President's Standard. The President's Standard is personal to His Excellency, not on the screen at this time, but it is a personal standard of His Excellency which is flown when he is in residence or when he is attending any public engagement. And this standard is lowered as soon as His Excellency departs that particular location.
Does it replace the national flag on this occasion?
It does not. In fact, the national flag is the senior flag, but this particular standard is regarded as personal to the holder, which comes down from the days of the sovereign, when there was a sovereign's personal standard.
It is in England. There is still the royal standard.
That's correct.
And that actually is hoisted and replaces the Union Jack when the sovereign enters, and while the sovereign is there. When the sovereign leaves, then it's taken down.
That's correct.
Which is why I wondered whether or not the same way it replaced our national flag.
The Commander of the Guard of Honor then requests leave of His Excellency to carry on with the parade. His Excellency has granted such leave, and the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives will then conduct their Excellencies to the diplomatic lounge. The aide-de-camp and the aide to Her Excellency will accompany their Excellencies.
Now, normally, in other countries, chiefly in England and even in countries such as Australia and Singapore, India, the head of state, who is His Excellency, our President, would, when he delivers his speech, his throne speech, well, we don't have a throne, but the equivalent here, would discuss the legislative agenda of the government of the day. In fact, in England, it's a prepared speech that the Queen reads, which is known as a throne speech, and it's written by the government cabinet, and it tells you what legislation they intend to pass during the year, bearing in mind that this is Parliament, and that's the function of Parliament. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, that has not been traditional. I recall in the last opening of Parliament, which was actually January of this year, if you all remember, there was a major opening. For some reason, about 2 weeks after Parliament had been prorogued, and the President, His Excellency, gave his own speech, which was not indicative of the legislative agenda of the government. So it's different in our country from other countries.
In fact, I recall in 2001 when the then President Arthur N.R. Robinson, he simply delivered very brief remarks and then left the chamber. I don't know if any of you all recall in 2001, January, in that Parliament.
I remember it was said that a speech had been delivered to him to read, and he did not do so. He did not read it. And I don't know if since then there have been no attempts to
try to
follow
do that.
Yes, maybe his head of state let him basically say what he thinks is appropriate. But generally, the head of state, which is a ceremonial or seen as like a ceremonial position, that person would read the legislative agenda. But our president, under our constitution, has more powers, more authority than the English monarch. There,
who's
for
more?
example,
Yes.
He appoints the independents, 9 senators. He appoints members of commission, the heads of those commissions, such as the Integrity Commission, the Police Service Commission. So there are more powers given to our president under our constitution. They are the spouses of members of the Senate.
I know, and this is one of the events that like when you're looking for party tickets for that really premium party, it's always to get on that invited list, and of course which are in a situation where the space etc. is also very limited. But somebody said to me that I should ask you a question if you have a bit of a time. They said you must ask Dana Sitahal, this is my granddaughter actually asking, how do you become an independent senator? And you were just because you were just talking about the sort of powers. We get a glimpse there of Orville London, who is Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly.
Leonard Stevenson, who is the ombudsman, and we just saw others, including Sharon Rowley.
And Mrs. Manning. Isn't that Mrs. Manning there? Hazel Manning.
Well, I didn't
catch. I was also looking to see Ashworth Jack, leader of the TOP and minority leader. I didn't catch a glimpse of him, but the cameras are now just moving around.
Mrs. Manning, I am not seeing her.
Isn't that Mrs. Manning there, just ahead of Mr. London?
No.
Oh, that's not Mrs.
No,
definitely not.
No.
Actually, how do you become an independent senator? Well, you don't apply. It's not an appointment by application. I think you have to be shown to be independent by not being a member. But I'm telling you what, when you can't be a member of any political party. You shouldn't be, because then you'd be partisan. And it's under the Constitution, it states that you should be a person or persons in different fields, including economics, and law would be one. The Constitution doesn't say law, but other fields, and which you I don't know if the word prominent is, but outstanding. So you're looking for people with outstanding ability in different fields. And how you come to the notice of the president is, I guess he would follow things through the media. He would follow things through what people tell him. He would take note of that. Probably he may at some point ask to see you in some other capacity. Not, I want to interview you to be the senator.
Right.
Just
Yes.
speak like that, and then the president would try to get some balance in terms of the persons that he's appointing. You want one lawyer. He's traditionally usually have one lawyer, and now that lawyer is Elton Prescott, an economist, somebody who's familiar with probably agriculture, who has that kind of experience, medicine, different fields. So you're bringing that to the mix. And so from all the people that he knows of, we considers probably has ability and is not aligned to any party, and who has, of course, people of apparent integrity, because you can never know the mind of anyone, as Shakespeare said, but seemingly. Here is Linda Babula, who was formerly president of the Senate in a very serious mood, and her husband next to her, Dr. Michael Babula.
So that answers the question, how do you become an independent senator? You don't apply for the job.
No.
I knew the answer in that sense, but but it is something that people think about.
I'm sure. I know people have sent in letters over the years, with
asking
their
to be
CV.
considered.
Well, I mean, they're probably sending their CVs so that you could probably consider it, and it may be, I guess, when the president is looking for temporary senators, he might look at that if he's, or probably for members of commissions and so on. But I feel that he usually would have a very certain idea of who he wants after he's looked at everyone and decided how long this person has been and should I replace this one, that kind of thing.
Her Excellency, Dr. Jean Ramjan Richards, accompanied by her daughter, Ms. Maxine Richards, they have been escorted to their seat in the Parliament chamber by the Chief of Protocol and aide to Her Excellency. Somewhere in the precincts of the Parliament, the procession to the chamber will be forming up at this time, and the procession will be in the following order: the Marshal of Parliament, the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, His Excellency the President, following immediately behind them, and behind him will be the aide-de-camp to His Excellency the President.
And it is running on time, Grantley, because I just took a glance at my watch. Like clockwork, 2:50. The program says that His Excellency Professor George Maxwell Richards, I don't know what all the initials are, but the TC, CMT, PhD, President and Commander-in-Chief of the
TC,
Republic.
Trinity Cross,
Trinity
CMT,
Cross.
Shakonia Medal.
Oh, these are his medals.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's the procession. The Marshal of Parliament has just announced the arrival of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. His Excellency will take his place in front of the throne. The Speaker of the House of Representatives will be on His Excellency's right, and the President of the Senate on his left. His Excellency has bowed to the right, and then he bowed to the left, and the national anthem will be played. Short prayers will be said by representatives of the Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Orisha, and Baha'i communities.
Would you stand for prayer?
This is kind of long.
O Lord, our governor, bless the leaders of our land, that we may be a people of peace among ourselves and a blessing to other nations of the earth. To the President of our Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Prime Minister, and members of Cabinet, and all members of Parliament, grant wisdom and grace in the exercise of their duties. To the President of the Senate and the senators and all those who make our laws, give courage, wisdom, and foresight to provide for the needs of all people and to fulfill their obligations in the community of nations. And finally, teach our people to rely on your strength and to accept their responsibilities, that we may serve you faithfully in this your generation and honor your holy name. For yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all, now and forevermore. Amen. remain standing.
Jagadambikaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Maheshwaraya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Om Vinayakam Gurum Bhanum Brahma Vishnu Maheshwaran Saraswatim Pranamyadav Sarvakaryartha Siddhaye. May the ceremonial opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be successful. May the Parliament be successful in providing good governance for the country. And may the Parliament be successful in providing an equal place for every creed and race. Swasti Prajabhye Paripalyantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahisha Go Brahmanebhya Shubhamastu Nityam Lokas Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May good betide all. May the government govern righteously. May all attain what is good. And may all be prosperous and happy. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. As we take refuge in God, may the peace that passeth all understanding prevail. Thank you.
So we can expect now a representative of the Muslim faith.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala nabeen wa mursaleen. All praise is due to Allah the Most High, and peace and blessings on His prophets, messengers, those who come in His name, and we here gathered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, O people, be careful of your duty to your Lord, who created you from a single being and created its mate of the same kind and spread from these two many men and women. And be careful of your duty to Allah, by whom you demand one another of your rights and to the ties of relationship. Surely Allah ever watches over you. And no soul earns evil but against itself, and no bearer of burden shall bear the burden of another. And surely with difficulties is ease, with difficulty is surely ease. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken the truth, and so too the noble prophet upon whom be peace in reporting it. May we understand it better than those who have heard it before. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. Thee do we serve, and thee do we beseech for help. Keep us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path of those upon whom wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray. Accept our prayer and service, O most just, compassionate, and forgiving God, Lord of honor, truth, and dignity. Amen.
A representative of the Muslim faith, former Senator Noble Khan.
Iba Olodumare, Iba Oloru, Olofi Eleda Orumela, Iba Bogbo Risha, Iba She Bogbo Egun Ara Urun Timbelese Olodumare. We pay homage to the owner and the creator of the universe. We pay homage to all the divinities of the heavenly realm. And we give thanks and respect to all of our ancestors who respect God. Iba Yeshu, divine messenger of transformation, keeper of the doorway, guardian of the crossroads, the one who takes our prayers, our petitions, and our offerings to the realm of the Spirit. We give you praise. As we give thanks this evening for the successful ceremonial opening of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, we remember one of the verses of the Odu Osameji, which says, Ori buruku ki wu tulu, aki dashe, ashiwere molo jona. The head of a person with a bad future does not swell up. No one can recognize the footprints of a madman on the road. And no one can distinguish the head of an honorable person in an assembly. Surely, the head that will wear the crown tomorrow, no one can recognize it. Therefore, let husband and wife stop calling each other names and stop talking foolishly to each other. For the head that will wear the crown tomorrow, no one can tell which one it will be. Divine Mother Oshu, Yemoja, Olokun, Odu, Oya. We give you praise this evening as we salute the feminine energy in the universe. Divine Mother Oshu, Orisha of fresh water, coolness, beauty, fertility, and sweetness, we call on you today to send your ashe of healing and cleansing to this Parliament. We ask you to dismiss all and any negative energies that may be present in our space. May you guide Mother Kamla and her cabinet to make the kinds of decisions that will assist us to move forward in peace, love, and unity. We ask for blessings on all of us gathered here today, especially His Excellency, our President, George Maxwell Richards, our Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, our Attorney General, our Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of Government and of the Opposition, Senators, Speakers of the House, Security, clerical staff, and all who work to ensure that the business of government is conducted smoothly. May the divine energies bless us all. Ashe.
Beautiful offering there from a member of the Orisha faith.
The Lord of Revelation saith, O Son of Man, my eternity is my creation. I have created it for thee. Make it the garment of thy temple. My unity is my handiwork. I have wrought it for thee. Clothe thyself therewith, that thou mayest be to all eternity the revelation of my everlasting being. Dear Lord, in every political age, epoch, and dispensation, we as a people have sought to better live out the hope and promise of the national anthem. Here every creed and race find an equal place. We implore your ever-sustaining grace and favor as we continue in our long march towards a more perfect and a more enduring union. Lord, you have not called us as a nation and a people to distinguish ourselves through military might or even economic power, and surely not by the pretense of superior knowledge or learning, even though such a possibility is real. Ours have been the call to distinguish ourselves as a people by the grand experiment of human inclusion. Our roots are in the first Americans, the first Europeans, the first Africans, and the first Asian peoples. We are in the globe, and the globe is in us. And amongst our high officers of state, there are some who have sworn by the Holy Gita, some by the Bible, some by the Quran, some by Almighty God, some by Allah and Almighty Allah, and some by affirmation. Yet all have sworn to bear true faith and allegiance to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Lord, may this be our reality. May we live to benefit from the glory of this land and of its people, and may we be blessed to be a shining example to all nations and all peoples for all times.
So, Grantley and Dana, we've had first part of what will precede the presidential address, the throne speech, so to speak, which is the offering of prayers blessing the proceedings from the
President of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, other members of Parliament. Having determined by proclamation dated 4th of June 2010 that the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago should begin with a session to be held at the Red House in Port of Spain on Friday, 18th of June 2010 at 1:30 p.m., I am happy to be here this afternoon as we continue with the ceremonial opening of this, the first session. I acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, Chief Justice, Sir Ellis Clark, former President, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished visitors from overseas, particularly our CARICOM family, and other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate every person who has been elected or selected to serve the people of our country following the general elections of 24th May 2010. I recognize you as individuals bringing your particular expertise and skills to bear on the tasks ahead, but also as a part of a collective working together in the Parliament and outside, regardless of political affiliation,
to take the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago forward. It is the first time in the history of our nation that we have at the helm of government a woman, and it is fitting that special acknowledgement be given to that fact. A fact which you have recognized merits applause for the very many things that it connotes. Let us see this for what it is. Evidence of the process of maturing that has been taking place, the women of Trinidad and Tobago positioning themselves in order to secure a more visible profile in leadership roles in every aspect of life in our country. For those who have eyes to see, this is not happenstance or something that has occurred by chance. It strikes me that the rewards of embracing opportunities for education in its broadest sense, as well as gaining relevant experience in the various avenues of national life, are evident, and the women of this country ought to be keenly aware of the signals that are being sent. A more gentle, caring society. Yes, but there must be no room whatever for patronage. The country has come out of a rigorous, if not most bruising, election campaign, and as the then Prime Minister-elect stated, as the results of the polls became clear, the elections are over. These are profound words which we would all, every single one of us, do well to remember and to embrace with scrupulous exactitude. We are now witnessing a handing over process which appears to be going well, and it is my hope that all who are involved will be sensitive to the need to ensure a smooth transition so that the country can settle down in this new dispensation. I extend best wishes to the new Prime Minister and her team, as I do to the new leader of the opposition and his team. Professional public servants representing a continuum and dedicated to the welfare of our country are there to help you. Much work needs to be done to build upon the past, adjusting as necessary and forging ahead with appropriate thrust. In this context, in considering our several independent institutions established under our Constitution, which guides the executive, we must be careful to properly assess their value. The pace of delivery of some of them may not quite meet the demands with which we are faced, but I advise caution against consigning them to history. I advocate rather that the conditions under which they function be dispassionately examined in order to ensure that they are properly equipped to fulfill their tasks, and moreover, that these conditions are such as to consolidate their independence as guardians of our democracy. As I have said at another time in this House, while policy decisions are the business of the government and the Parliament, executing of policy relies heavily on agents of the state and others throughout the national community at every level of the society. The matter of productivity is relevant, and in the context also of world competitiveness, where there has been considerable slippage in respect of Trinidad and Tobago. As I mentioned not long ago, we have slipped from 42nd place on the Global Competitiveness Index in 2002-2003 to 86 in 2009-2010 out of 133 countries. But productivity does not suddenly occur in a vacuum. It is a culture and a way of life that must be nurtured. While leadership in the labor movement understandably negotiates to secure the best compensation for the country's organized labor from which others may benefit, even so, much greater productivity than is now the case must be required of the workforce. This is not applicable only in the formal sector, but across the board. Moreover, the education system must be so structured and managed as to encourage a correct attitude to productivity and a better understanding of what this means for our country in terms of poverty, of alleviation and eradication, becoming more self-sufficient, and being at the forefront of development. Poverty alleviation and eradication will not become reality in a culture of low productivity. There is no question, but there are those in our society who must be assisted because of their financial circumstances. But programs of such assistance, particularly at the lower age bracket, must be so organized as to enable recipients to work their way out of dependence on state benevolence. We ask ourselves, how far must state benevolence go? What are the entitlements of the people? How much of these entitlements must the government provide? These are matters that can be debated from different perspectives and it is certain that different and opposing views will persist for a long time. We all know that a government must take the lead in the provision of certain basic services. For example, healthcare, water, electricity, roads and transportation, and we expect that the pace of development in these areas will be accelerated. Housing is another area in which an aggressive policy must be pursued. The private sector will continue to play its part, responsibly recognizing, it is hoped, that the market is way beyond the reach of the working and middle classes, and collaborate in doing something about it in order to pull back the working poor from homelessness. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the working poor are a reality, but they are not as recognizable as the indigent among us, and so their plight can be easily ignored while others take center stage. How much is expected of the government, and how are the needs to be met? I leave this burning question before you in the hope that fairness and responsible action be the bedrock on which decisions will be taken. Everyone, including the most vulnerable, has a part to play in the economy, and it is a responsibility about which, as a people, on the whole, we must have greater awareness. This is a fact that must be inculcated in our children. Artisans, providers in our indigenous and evolving food culture, homemakers, technicians and professionals, exponents of the arts, for example, must all assume their places in moving the economy forward. I am of the view that not enough attention is paid to the informal sector. And so, our people have forgotten the sewing machines, the baker's ovens, the homemade hot pepper sauce, and the confectionery, to name just a few items of cottage industry, which have sometimes provided the means necessary to produce the next generation of highly qualified and distinguished persons. Too many of us have forgotten or do not know about small beginnings and sacrifice. By seeking a recognized and critical space for that category of potential contributor, I am by no means suggesting that we keep our manufacturing sector, for example, in the early 20th century mood. We must have an advanced state-of-the-art manufacturing sector based on the use of new and established scientific and technological knowledge, embracing the potential role of existing technologies such as biotechnology, nanotechnology, new materials, as well as information and communications technology, which have broad applications and which impact the economy. But in continually seeking to modernize that sector so that we may be competitive in international trade, we must at the same time be mindful of the hard lessons of other countries. Ways and means must therefore be found to avoid further dislocation of the workforce by recalling the skills to which I have referred as examples in order to restore the dignity and independence of those who are currently at the lower levels of the economic ladder, but who through appropriate government policy must be encouraged to see the possibility of upward mobility. Full-time employment is a highly desirable goal, but whatever the statistics say in that regard does not alter the fact that if we work little at our full-time or part-time jobs, the country will not go forward. Flexi-time, which is already a feature in this country, in the public service at least, will not assist productivity if beating the traffic results only in workers having breakfast on the job instead of at home, thereby cutting down the 8-hour workday to 7, if not less. While there are those who go beyond the call of duty, our current level of productivity generally is not at all acceptable. And this leads me to the matter of innovation in the context of job creation, which education in its proper sense must encourage. In this regard, there is ample room for innovation on the part of our people, not least our young people at the post-secondary stage of education. As for diversification, how can we rate ourselves? This is a much overworked word in our vocabulary of plans, and in this area we have come up short, very short. Our heavy dependence on the oil and gas sector, with its inherent vicissitudes, cannot continue. Other revenue-generating industries must be developed to buffer the economy against possible shocks in the international environment. There are undeniable possibilities, for example, in agriculture, which must be geared towards the goal of food sufficiency and the consequent reduction in our massive food import bill. This would also require policy decisions and development in areas allied to that sector. There are many other avenues for diversification and in which the government can no doubt take the lead. But ways must be found to so communicate the vision that the people all over the country, regardless of traditional occupations, become a part of the process and are encouraged to make the choice of taking the opportunities offered. The concern regarding diversification, which so far has remained largely in the realm of discussion, rests not only on the matter of income, which is very important, but there are environmental conditions or considerations as well. The time has long since come for us to harness and employ alternative sources of energy, some of which are already available to us. And it is my hope that with the new environmental legislation signaled by the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, serious steps will be taken in that regard. I have sought, ladies and gentlemen, over the past several minutes, simply to highlight a few areas in which government, in its broad sense, by deliberations brought to the Parliament by the people's representatives, might engage the national community in decisions that have as their objective greater success in our nation's future. But the government must be careful to leave room for people to define what success means to them and room for them to achieve that success. Parliament provides a forum where the interests of the people can be vigorously pursued and secured by legislation that provides the greatest good for the greatest number. This responsibility towards the people of our nation must not be subordinated in the cut and thrust of political engagement. On both sides of the political divide, constituents expect to be properly represented, issues being paramount. Discipline, law, and order must be watchwords that guide our living in this country. At the level of leadership, we have a particular charge in this context to avoid mixed signals. Therefore, much as we may be tempted otherwise, we need to give deep considerations to reining in ourselves so that our collective voice may achieve maximum benefit for all our citizens. Robert Louis Stevenson is reported to have said that politics is perhaps the only profession for which no preparation is thought necessary. I believe that there are those who have discovered otherwise. And those of you who are new to the arena may want to consider an approach different from that which is suggested in the famous essayist, novelist, and poet's remarks. In closing, may I exhort that you strive to make this forum attractive to the youth of our nation, to whom we must pass the baton of leadership. Let us maintain a proper tone, eschewing adversarial stances as a constant feature, and respecting the separation of powers according to our Constitution. Let us conduct our business in this Parliament in decency and in order, regarding one another as persons who have been blessed with the privilege of serving in the highest forum in the land, and for which privilege history will hold us accountable. May God grant you wisdom, and may God bless our nation.
Well, Damien Grantley, we've heard from His Excellency the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Max Richards, playing of the national anthem.
His Excellency's address having come to an end, the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate will escort His Excellency out of the chamber.
Well, where we have a little bit of, not a lull, but certainly, Dana, very quickly to get some reactions to some of the high points. I thought it was a very good speech. But, you know, I just thought that we could zero in on some of his high points.
Of course. Well, it was about 28 minutes. I timed it. And
good for you.
Say that 20 minutes is as long as you can take, but still, it was such that even though it went over what normally is considered, in my view, time to keep your attention. Other people tend to talk very long these days. It captured so many different matters. It was very wide-ranging, and with his quotes from the poets and references to different members of the House, he kept their attention. So I have about 8 points. I don't know.
Well, I was furiously writing because he started off, I think, really sort of in the occasion, really talking about the process of maturation, and recognizing the historic importance of electing a female prime minister, but also you sort of saying to women, take note that while we are talking about we need a more gentle, caring kind of feel, the more feminine touch in politics, that there is no room for patronage. That's one of the first things, one of his first salvos, so to speak, that I thought he fired. That in all of this, that we have to be mindful that there's no room for patronage in what it is that we're doing. And he's now departing with the presiding officers, but yes. I think he did a really, he tried to temper, saying that we've come out of a very intense, bruising election campaign, but now we have to settle down and get on with the business of government.
which is what he was talking about. Really, I think the focus on this had to do with work and productivity.
Yes.
That was the theme. But here's the national anthem.
Well, as you were saying, Granny, this is the fifth and final time that we will hear the anthem today.
Yes,
So-
this is the final time. Yes.
Okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just, for purposes of explaining how many times we've heard the anthem today. This is the fifth occasion.
Actually, there's something there I wanted to. We're talking about numbers. We keep talking about the 10th Parliament, and it is the 10th Parliament as a republic. If you consider from 1976 under the Republican Constitution, with the first Parliament, and then straight onto 1981, 1986, 91, 95. And then there was a break. It was every 5 years, and then, of course, that early election in 95. And then we went on to from 95 to 2000, 5 years, and then you had those 3 elections.
2001.
2002.
2002.
And then
2007.
And
Yes.
now you had this very short term. So this is the 10th Parliament. Clarify that. But there was something that, oh sorry, you wanted to say something?
Do you all remember His Excellency's address in January?
I was
January
about
13.
to say.
Yes, profound address, yes.
I had noted that and written about it, but there was something then he also emphasized, and that was the question of the global competitive index he mentioned, and how we had fallen, and the need for productivity. And he also talked about poverty alleviation and so on. But this time, to me, he went into some more specifics. But before I get into the substance of it, I would have thought that was more of the opening salvo when he said, the independent institutions that we have, the pace of their delivery may not be as what we would like, but do not discard them. What we should do is to look at the conditions under which operate and the equipment, and it is necessary to seek to protect them, to ensure their independence. I believe that has to do with statements may have been made in relation to the Integrity Commission not performing as quickly as they should in some matters, and we all know that. Those were mentioned, I believe, by the Attorney General. And here's what the head of state, the President of the Republic, is saying, that really, look at, this is an independent institution. We can't really, we ought not to seek to do away with it. We should look to strengthen it, because it's one of the things of the several institutions that really, he didn't mention the name, but
to me it was very, it was very clear, that message.
Protect our independence.
And then there were some very forceful statements in respect of productivity, and then how public service productivity is viewed and so on.
But that came after, when he started off with this, and then he went on to talking about, the government really needs the public servants, really, or at least the agents of the state, as he called it, because not only public servants, all agents of the state, to execute their policy, and that our productivity has fallen, which is evidenced by the same global competitive index, and that it must be required of the workforce. Everyone must come on board, because if we are going to talk about, this is his message, poverty alleviation and eradication, and we need to be self-sufficient and get on with the development. Well, and how can we do this unless we have high productivity?
Yes, and I think that was it was in diplomatic speak. I think to addressing the fact that the new government does in fact have a very, very significant and forceful representation of Labour on the government side now, and this is something that obviously he's saying that we really have to produce. There's no point in producing a little bit at a full-time job or a part-time job. Yeah. But then I think interestingly as well, Grantley and Dana, he went on to make linkages that it was just not strictly about performance on the job, but that education and the way in which the social programs, that the social assistance programs of the state.
And going back to some basics.
That's
correct, yes.
And he talked about state benevolence and the fact that it could be highly debatable as to who should get what and how much. I mean, he wasn't saying it in those words, but he did specifically speak to the issue of social assistance being there to enable people to move out of dependency.
But that was the big point. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's what my big points. Really, the focus, and he asked the question twice, if you remember. What are the limits of government support for those? We have to be careful not to create and entrench a dependency syndrome. I thought that was the message that he was talking about there. And he made a point that the working poor is more often ignored when you're looking at merely the people who are indigent. They really
on the streets and so on. Yeah.
The poverty. You want to give them things. You want to give them homes. You want to give them housing. You want to say we provide. You want to do this and hampers or whatever it is. But the working poor, that's the people who work, but
the productive
they work
sectors
so little that they after paying their rent or whatever it is, they have very little. So they are the ones who are an ignored group. Really.
Yes, but actually that was one of the two asterisks that I have. The one on the independence of the institutions that we have as guardians of democracy and the need to be strengthening them. And I really put one because this is where he started to segue into education. He talked about the social programs. He talked about the sort of basic services that a government is expected to deliver to its people. And he hopes that some of these like health and roads and transport, etc., will be accelerated. And then he mentioned the housing policy, and that's where he segued into the thing about that middle group, the middle classes, which a lot of us think we follow, we work very hard, but it's the working poor, the productive sectors,
I think it's probably the real poor.
Papers.
But they work under
the Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table an address of His Excellency the President on the occasion of the opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that His Excellency's address be printed as a House paper.
Honourable members, the question is that the address of His Excellency the President on the occasion of the opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be printed as a House paper. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Honourable Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. 1, the notification of His Excellency the President in respect of the nomination of Mr. Neil Parker for the appointment to the office of Commissioner of Police. 2, the notification of His Excellency the President in respect of the nomination of Mr. Stephen Williams for appointment to the office of Deputy Commissioner of Police. 3, the notification of His Excellency the President in respect of the nomination of Mr. Maurice Pigott for the appointment to the office of Deputy Commissioner of Police. 4, the notification of His Excellency the President in respect of the nomination of Mr. Jack Iwatsky for appointment to the office of Deputy Commissioner of Police.
Statements by ministers.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. May I take this opportunity to congratulate your good self on your election to the office of this honorable chamber. May I also take this opportunity to congratulate all members on the election to this august chamber. At this historic moment in our country's history, I stand humbled by the confidence reposed in us to serve in the government. We pledge to serve with dignity and honor befitting our tasks. As I've said before, we have 3 pledges, and they are 3 priorities. Serve the people 1, serve the people 2, and serve the people as priority 3. We intend to deliver on our pledges to drive the change we promised. I use this opportunity today to manifest the change, the new way of proceeding with the people's business which we, in the government of Trinidad and Tobago, have embarked upon since the nation elected us to office. If I had to choose what would be my first statement in this Parliament as Prime Minister, I may not have decided upon making this one. But the very need to make it points to an unfortunate period in our democracy. Ironically, it is precisely the purpose that this hallowed house serves, the preservation of our democracy. The right of a citizen to participate in choosing his/her representatives and government at both the national and the local levels is a most important pillar supporting and sustaining democracy and democratic traditions. This right was ably demonstrated by our citizens who participated in the recent elections in our nation. To them we say thank you. We say thank you to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for the conduct and the manner in which that election was carried through and for the transition which we are now going through. Elections are a form of a contract between the citizens and those elected, that is us here. Elections give to citizens the opportunity to decide how they wish to be governed, as well as to influence the utilization of resources at both the national and community levels. In a truly functioning democracy, the people must never be denied the opportunity to vote, as is mandated, whether by constitutional means or by convention. It is to be noted that local government has no protection by way of mention in the Constitution. A government could, by the stroke of a pen, eliminate local government altogether. In this regard, it will be important to give constitutional protection to local government in our nation. A nation's democracy is also founded upon local democracy. I want to assure our citizens that my government intends to respect and facilitate the right of the citizen to choose local representatives when elections are due. Local government is too important an institution to be deferred. I wish to advise that local government elections will be called using the existing law, following upon which mechanisms will be put in place to effect further change. In addition, new arrangements for financing local government will also be reviewed and implemented. My government will seek to give constitutional protection to local government. We are committed to bringing government closer to the people, and local government is an important part of this process. People must have the right to determine how they are governed. It is our duty to facilitate rather than frustrate. The holding of local government elections so soon after general elections is a situation we have inherited. As we all know, the life of the local government bodies expires on July 13th of this year. I promised during the election campaign that we would hold the long overdue local government elections soon after we took office. It is therefore fitting that my first act and statement as Prime Minister here in our nation's Parliament be a fulfillment of that pledge and reaffirmation of your government's commitment to democracy. In this context, I wish to advise that it is my intention that local government elections be held on the 26th of July 2010. I also wish to announce a reversal of the previous administration's stated policy of removing the seat of Parliament from the Red House. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the Red House will remain the official seat of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May God bless you. May God bless the deliberations of this Parliament and guide us all. And thank you very much.
Well, I could have applauded for that.
Honorable Leader of
last
the House.
statement about that.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other business, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn to Friday, June 25th, 2010 at 1:30 p.m., at which time the government intends to debate a motion to consider the appointments to the offices of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police. Thank you.
Before I put the question on the adjournment of this Honorable House, permit me to extend congratulations to all members on being elected to this Honorable House. I am indeed honored that you have elected me to serve as your Speaker, and I look forward to working productively with all of you. It is my pleasure to invite all distinguished guests to join His Excellency and members of Parliament in the rotunda for light refreshments immediately after the adjournment of the House. Honorable members, the question is that this House be adjourned to Friday, June the 25th, 2010 at 1:30 p.m. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Friday, June the 25th at 1:30 p.m.
Well, I guess Dana and Grantley, you've said it very well. This Speaker seems to have settled in very nicely into his role.
Indeed,
as if he was made for it.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, really, shows a touch of professionalism, more than the touch of professionalism.
Didn't falter at all.
At all.
Yes.
He has a lot of practice.
He's really a house person, really a house person. There he is, accompanied by the Marshal of Parliament, carrying the mace, that mace which has so much significance for the House of Representatives.
But there are two things that arose just now. There are actually three. The first being, to my mind, the announcement, of course, of the debate for the posts of the Commissioner and the three deputies. That's in accordance with regulations that were passed by the Parliament. That were approved, I should say, by the Parliament, right? Because they were not acts. And there are two foreigners to be the first the Commissioner of Police, which would be unprecedented in the last 20 years or so to have a foreign Commissioner of Police.
Neil Parker is the name.
Yes, and he was actually, and to me, this is ironic, a deputy commissioner in Antigua, where there is a police force of 300. So I'm looking to hear what others have to say about that. I wouldn't make my views known in this forum at this time, but that's one. And the other, and one of the three deputies.
Jackie Watsky.
Yes.
Yes.
And the other issue of interest is the local government elections, and I'm sure you will have something to say about that. Three times we have come to Parliament, but we as in it has come before Parliament. The government came, then government, and postponed these elections, giving, I believe I mentioned earlier, giving members of the local government a longer tenure than members of the elected Parliament have, which is the most they can have is 5 years, 3 months. But imagine you have members of the local government have these 6 years already, going on 7. That is unprecedented. I want to find another word rather than ludicrous.
Well, there you go. But the announcement coming, first order of business, official statements from the Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, of July 26 as the date for local government elections. And her other parliamentary bomb that she dropped today is that Red House remains a seat of parliament for Trinidad and Tobago, and that certainly in her administration there are no designs to move the business of parliament elsewhere. So those were her two.
Those would be the headlines.
Those would be the two headlines, definitely.
But I think of particular interest to the services, well, the police service in particular, would be the debate to take place next week.
Yes.
And there is much interest in the appointment of a commissioner of police and certainly the deputy commissioner. So there are two excellent officers in the running there for the post of deputy commissioner of police, in Mr. Piggott and Stephen Williams, yes.
Well, actually, he's a lawyer. We're talking about all these other lawyers. He is too. I taught him, and he was a good student.
And he held a very important portfolio in the conference, the Commonwealth Heads of Government Conference. He was, in fact, the gold commander.
Yes, and actually, that was a much better run conference, if I may say, than the summit we had, where there were even actually no orders posted, to have that whole area locked down. It was actually not sanctioned by the law, which is a nice way of saying it was illegal, because there were no orders published. But everything was done properly, as Mr. Dicker said, in the second one under the command of Mr. Williams.
And there's a view among some that probably there was an ample opportunity to rehearse as a result of the Fifth Summit Conference.
Well, I don't know you could see a summit of that magnitude as a rehearsal. I thought that it was just done in a kind of a bravado kind of way without consideration of the law, but that's for another time. But the local government elections, I find it interesting that it's being called so soon, which is probably 6 weeks from today.
Well, I guess, the country, the Prime Minister prefaced her statements by saying that, it's something that was promised, and that given the facts that you have stated more than once today, the long terms for local government.
I agree.
That it's come very clearly, right, very forward on their agenda. So that's another election for the country to go through.
But it's only 13 days after July 13th. It's just that I thought maybe, a few weeks. But anyway, as you say, it's overdue, long overdue. So.
Well, I think this, with all the milling around and people now sort of moving out of the chamber and making their way to the rotunda for a little more of the hobnobbing, this is hopefully, President Max Richards says that he hopes that the cut and thrust of partisan politics will not prevent the orderly and best serving of the people's interest in the Houses of Parliament. And of course, we get to see live here and direct on the parliamentary channel the convening of the Parliament on the 25th of June, 1:30 p.m. So this just about brings us to the end of our coverage of the ceremonial opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. On behalf of the commentary team here with you this afternoon, Dana Sita-Hal, Senior Counsel, and Grantley Dick, I'm Josanne Leonard, thanking you so much for joining us here on the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM.